Just under our welcome message, you will see an empty questions box. Throughout the presentation, feel free to type in your questions here, click send, and both Mo and I will be able to read and respond to these at the end of the webinar. Now I would like to introduce Professor Mo Sattar. Teaching at Bay Path College since 2006, Mo's primary academic concentrations include entrepreneurship, business and operations strategies, financial management, and investment strategies. Mo also brings over 30 years of business management experience to Bay Path College and has held numerous leadership positions in the business field. Here's Mo.
Hi, good afternoon to all of you, and I'm glad you could join us. What I want to do today is to spend some time talking about a process, and like Cheryl mentioned, I did about 30 years in corporate America, all in United Technologies, in different divisions between Pratt & Whitney, Hamilton, and also corporate office. And I was fortunate enough to have a very rewarding career, and during my journey over the 30 years, I was helped by some mentors, and I had the opportunities to move around both from function to function. Started my career in engineering, then moved on into finance, and then from there into manufacturing, and then from there into international business, and from there into supply chain procurement, and then eventually general management. So I was fortunate enough to move around. I took the education that I had, both the undergraduate and I have 2 master's degree, to use it to help develop my career. So what I wanted to do is to talk about one of the models that I have used, and I've also taught some students, and as far as people in the past to be able to use it. Okay. The journey I want to start out with today is to kind of make believe that we are all in the Alice in Wonderland. And I think, as you recall from the Alice in Wonderland, Alice fell down into this jungle. She ends up meeting Alice in Cheshire the cat. So the Alice says, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go? And the Cheshire the cat said, that depends a good deal on where you want to go. Alice said, I don't care much. Then it doesn't matter which way you walk, said the cat, so long as I get somewhere. And I think what I've seen in many people, that even though we all, and I have been in my career, have to focus on what is in front of us, have to be able to have a job, pay the bills, but I've always felt that we also need some kind of a long-term plan, in the sense that if you're going to go from here to California, we need some kind of a map quest, something that at least keeps us to say, what else would I want to do? So I want to do is to talk about one of those models today, and then later on I will do other webinars. We're going to talk about a few other things in there. Okay. So we all have, and I know I did many, many years ago, always kind of felt like Alice when it comes to a career, not sure exactly where to go. And I've always, when I've done this coaching to many of the younger associates when I was at United Technologies as an executive, and even after that when I left the corporate America and got into the coaching and the education part of the career, I've always told the students and always told the people, at least sit down and lay out some kind of a roadmap. Okay. Because what happens is if we don't, it is human nature for us to get very, very focused in our past. I think sometimes, no matter where we are, we could be Alice in the Wonderland, or we could be in corporate America, or we could be starting our own business. I think what happens is sometimes we get too focused on our past that sometimes either they become a baggage or a fear, or we make the same things again and again, not recognizing that some of the things may have changed. So we end up sitting in the traffic rather than asking ourselves, is it time to get off the highway on the next exit and go do something else? Okay. So typical questions I get, even today, that I used to get when I was at corporate America, when some of the younger associates would come and ask me, and they would say, what should I do next? Should I get more schooling? Should I get more training? Should I change my jobs? And my answer would always be that depends on your plan. What is your plan? If you say you want to go from here to California, you'll take a different route than if you had to go from here to Florida. And most times I find that the answer I would get is to say, but I don't have a plan. And my answer is always is, well, develop a plan. And I get this conversation as I started to have led to myself developing and helping people out to develop the plan, and then to come up with some steps to say, okay, let's first figure out a longer-term plan is what you want to do. Now, I used to do for all my mentees at that time, and even sometimes I've done coaching in between my teaching and when I was in corporate America, there were two exercises I would make the person do. One would be is to create a longer-term plan, which is more like a 1 to 3 year plan. And that's the subject of today's webinar. The next thing I would also have them do, which we do more short-term plan between 3 months to 12 months, and that would be subject for the future webinar. So today I'm going to focus on more the longer-term plan, because I think it is really, really important that we, as you are all obviously worried about your current situation, your current job, what you're going to do, but if you're going to think longer term, you want to start to at least lay out a process. Now that is very, very similar when I teach investment strategies to how to worry about financial planning. Obviously, you have a short-term issues, how you're going to pay the bills, but you got some long-term issues. What are you going to do, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? So first thing I want to do is to start out with a couple of the quotes that I've come across that I've always felt very strongly about it, and both these I have it in front of my desk at home. The first one is the definition of goal. It is a dreams with deadlines. So one of the things that I always tell the folks I'm talking to, either be for investment planning or from career planning, I think what you want to do have to have some clarity on what your goals are. Doesn't mean they will not change. The answer is I guarantee you they will change for your career. Mine changed many times. I thought I was going to stay in engineering, and then I thought I was going to be in finance, and then I thought I was in manufacturing. So yes, they do change. But the thing is, at least for a foreseeable future, at least have some idea what is it. So this way, when we do see an opportunity knock on our door, at least we know that it's time to open the door. The second one is a commitment, which means that it is a line we cross between wishing and doing. And that means that if we want to do anything in our lives, we know that it just takes the go-to attitude. So if you have a good plan and a go-to attitude, my experience has been both professionally in a business environment and also personally for me in my goal-setting process for both my career and financial and in personal, that I think combination of those two increases the chances of having a successful outcome in the long run. Okay. So my career mapping process has got 6 steps. This is an abbreviated version of it. The reason I say abbreviated, this process along with the other 2 modules that I will cover in the future webinar are really a workshop that I created, and I did a few times many years ago, and that was more the getting a few people in the room in the workshop with the workbooks, and then we kind of go through the process over a 3-hour period. Obviously, I am not going to spend that much time on the webinar, so I'm going to use the abbreviated version of it, but this is the part A of the exercise, which is the longer term. And in there are 6 steps. One is obviously your goal setting. 2 is identify what is required to achieve the goals. 3 is prioritize. 4 is assess the current situation. 5 is identify ways to fill the gap, and 6 is the action plan. What I will do is I'm going to go through a brief description for each one of those 6 steps. So the very first step is to articulate your goal with as much clarity as possible. And I'm not talking about what you're going to do tomorrow. What I like to do is to kind of think to say, what I like to say, what if you could fast forward your resume to maybe 2 years from now or 3 years from now? What would it look like? What would it say? What would it say as far as what your job title is? What would it say about your responsibilities? What would it say, for example, if 3 years from now you want to be a director of marketing? What would it say on it? What industry will you be in? Would you be in health industry? Would you be in, so not that that's where you're going to end up, but I think as we ask some level of clarity in our mind, I think our eyes and ears and our senses kind of open up, and we start to see some opportunities that they were there, but we did not see it. And always ask what I say when you have a goal as to why do you want to do it. What I say, hey, what are your 3 whys? Why do you want to do this thing? And sometimes I think this is where our right side of the brain, the emotional side of the brain, starts to connect with the left side of the brain, which is more the logical side of the brain. And I think we can ask ourselves as to why. Why is that I wanted to do it? Obviously, one of them could be the money, but what are the other 2 whys? I think it is really, really important to kind of do that. Now, I've always kept what I call a leadership journal, which means that I always track of what I'm thinking. Every so often I go through this exercise every 6 months, and then I go through it. And the combination of your goal, why you want to do it, and a planning matrix that I'm going to talk about will help you, at least guide you through some of your journey going forward. So step one is what I like to do is to describe the matrix that I created about 10 years ago that I've used it, obviously for myself, but for many other people. And this matrix has on the right side is you're going to write your goal, and the blue portion is what I call your current situation. The bottom portion is the future situation. I'll talk about each one of them as I go forward. On the top where it says required experience, skills, and knowledge is a piece that you want to fill out, and obviously your toolbox. So that's the matrix you will create in this process. So when I do this workshop, obviously I would have a sheet like this and multiple sheets of this way, this way the audience can kind of play with it, and we would go through the process. Step one would be I would have them think about their goal. Before they would come to the workshop, I would tell them to think about the goal. They would come to the workshop, and some may have some clarity, some may not have some clarity, and some may have a lot of clarity. But the whole idea is to at least lay something in front of your brain to say, hey, this is what I would like to do if I can 1 to 3 years from now. Okay. Then what you want to do is to say, okay, if I want to achieve that goal, say 3 years from now, I fast forward my resume and it says I want to be director of marketing, I want to be director of operations, or director of finance, whatever. If I would be there in 3 years from now and had a high likelihood to be able to get that job, what are some of the skills I would have to have at that point to get it? So that's the portion where you want to do is to start thinking about what skills you should have. Next thing we're going to go through is to talk about what is your toolbox, which is what do you currently have that would satisfy what you need to have 1 year or 2 years or 3 years from now when you're going to be able to say, I think I'm ready for this job. So the question sometimes comes up is to say, okay, I understand the goal setting part. I think I want to do this thing, but what about these requirement things you're talking about, Mo? What are those things about experience and requirements? I said, well, what you want to do is to go and figure out, for example, I'm using this example, I said, what if somebody was, say, an entry-level manager or entry-level person in a marketing, and he or she wants to become a director of marketing 3 years from now. So I said, okay, what are some of the skills you would need? And they would say, I'm not sure. I said, well, then figure it out. And they say, well, how do I do that? I said, well, there are a couple of ways to do that. One is if you have your own internal company job postings, look to see what are some of the things you're looking for. Plus, go look at some of the websites for career and just click in director of marketing. And it doesn't matter where the job is. It could be in Arizona or it could be in Iowa and you have no plans to move there. It doesn't matter. When you look at enough of these job descriptions, you're going to find a pattern. You're going to find a pattern. So basically, when I was putting together this presentation, a couple of weeks ago, I just Googled director of marketing, and I started to look at the requirements. And basically, I would cut and paste some of these requirements from maybe 10, 12 different marketing jobs, and then I will start to see the pattern. So I think that's one place you can start to say, okay, what are people looking for? What are people looking for? So at least I know that those are the skills, the knowledge, experience I have to have. Same thing with responsibilities. So look at the requirements, look at the responsibilities, also look at what is preferred versus required. And I think what you're going to see is that if you print a bunch of these things out and hyhighlight them, you're going to see a pattern. You're going to see a pattern that the career path you want to take has certain pattern. And I think that will say that if I can go in and put those things in my process matrix, at least I will know that those things I have to be able to convince in the interview that I do have it. Okay. So these are just an example. You can just go in and go to any of those websites for thecareer.com or a Monster Job, and you can just find things, and it's going to help you kind of figure out, hey, this is what it's going to look like as far as what the requirements are. So now that you have done that, you would basically say, hey, what are some of those 5 of them that see a typical pattern? What are the 5 things that they talk about? Obviously, it could be understanding the numbers, or could be able to do this, or maybe a certain tool set that you have to understand. Whatever your job situation that you want to be in, at least you want to start to say, hey, this is what they're looking for. Now, when I'm doing this workshop, I basically spend a lot of time having conversation go around the table. So we typically spend about almost an hour between 10 people to have this conversation. But the whole idea is to be able to each one of you in this case is to start thinking about, hey, what are those requirements and responsibilities that I need to have that will increase my chances of getting that job, and also how do I prioritize it? What do I see a pattern? What is the most important? Now, you may not be able to exactly come up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but at least see what are the top 2 and 3 and what are the bottom 3 and 4. At least you can lay out those 5 things that are really, really important. Next thing you want to do is to say, okay, if I was sitting, hypothetically or metaphorically, if I was sitting in front of somebody who was interviewing me for this job, and they would say, hey, okay, Mo, of those 5 things, what have you done, in your life? So this would be the process where I would say, okay, let's see what you have done and where do you have a match. Your education, your current job, maybe last couple of jobs, you don't want to go down all the way back, but at least, a couple of 3 jobs. Your volunteering experience, it's really, really important. Because sometimes you see in many of the jobs, they will say you have to have project management experience, you have to have, people skill or whatever. And I think collectively in our lives, we have all done volunteer work, and obviously we do it for, besides not for the money because we want to help, but that has brought experiences in our lives. A lot of the experience that I've collected had to do with the volunteer work. So if I think it from an intersection between what my goal is, from there what are the required things are, and from there what do I have, I think it starts to, in your brain, starts to connect things and say, I think I can do a lot more than I giving myself credit, because I'm reading my resume, and obviously I didn't think about volunteer work from a perspective of, for example, if one of the intersection was project management, and you could have done projects for volunteer, for school, for your kids, or at work, or for United Way, or any place else. Okay. Then the next step is, the 5th step is to say, okay, now that I've done this exercise, and obviously this is one of those situations, and I say this thing very bluntly to the people when I do this thing in live, is that be honest with yourself. I thought it's very, very tempting to fill all those boxes. There are 2 things that are very, very tempting for us as humans, and I have done it, so and we all do that every so often, unless you're reminded by ourselves or somebody else. One is, when you are defining the criteria and the knowledge and the skill set, do not fill in what you think the job needs or what you think you are good at it, because then you will defeat the purpose of this process. You will not identify the real gaps that you have to close. Super important to be very, quote unquote, more the research thinking, to say, hey, the pattern tells me, good, the bad, or the ugly, these are the 5 things I have to have. And then be very honest as far as what you have done. Be a little bit lenient with yourself. Don't be too hard, but be very honest. So at least your whole idea is to say that if you are creating this journey between now and what your resume look like 2, 3 years from now, you want to at least identify the gaps. And from there, you can say, okay, my future plan needs to be, what do I do next? I had a conversation 3 years ago with a student who was thinking of getting into an MBA program, and then she did. And one of the classes that I teach in the MBA is the finance. And we were having this conversation, and she was not interested in really spending a lot of time in finance. And I told her, I said, this is important. And she said, no, I don't need this thing. So I had to go through this exercise. And she started to realize when she went through it that even the job in the industry she wanted to be in, knowledge of budgets and finance was not a requirement, or would be preferred. And I said, okay, if it's preferred, that means if somebody else comes in and has a preferred and you don't, then chances of that person getting a job is higher. So I think what happens is that even many of you who are current MBA students, in this audience, I think you want to start to think about, to say, okay, every class that I am taking, I want to make the most out of it, because this way it would close some gaps that I know of today, or maybe they will pop up as I'm trying to move up into my career in terms of changing the industry or changing the job or changing the functions like I did from engineering to finance and so on. And look at the volunteer work that you can do, and look at the special projects you can do at work, and look at some of you who may be working and there may be some training at work. Look at the training that you can take that helps you fill those gaps. So when you get done, you can kind of start to visualize this matrix getting stronger and stronger over the next 3 months, next 6 months, next 12 months, and so on. From there, obviously, plan is a plan. This is where the commitment conversation comes in. It's a line we cross between wishing and doing. Once you know what your gaps are, at least take 3 at a time. Obviously, if we make a list a little too long, we never get it done. Take 3 at a time. Write down what is the next thing you will do and when you're going to do it. And more important, what is holding you back? If you are at the point, you went through the process, you concluded what your goal is, what your resume should look like, what you want to do 3 years from now or 2 years from now. You identified what are some of the skills and knowledge you need based on what your research is telling you. You looked at what you already have. You identified what the gaps are, and now you have to close them. Okay, and that's what you want to start to lay it out. And if something is holding you back, then our question is, what can you do to close that gap? Okay. So, in summary, again, try it out. I think I've done it many times, not just for myself, but help other people when I used to do these workshops, which I've not done in the last few years, and go through it and see how it helps you. And I think this will also be a prelude to the other webinars that I will do maybe in the next few weeks on the other two modules of this process. Okay. So how did the process help you? I think the way it helps us, help me, and help others that I've helped, is it is the definition of effective. You work on the right things at the right time. And by knowing the gaps, you know that we all have limited amount of energy and time. And more we work on the pieces of the puzzle that have to be filled, because you know those are the top 3 or 5 things that have to be filled to make you successful in what you want to do, I think we become more effective. We put our energy, we put our time, we put our money in the areas that makes it more effective. I'll also make a comment in case if I forget in the end, is that you can use this process of starting a business too. I've used this when I've taught from a business strategy perspective. Your business could be a goal of starting something. Could be a bakery, could be a salon, could be accounting service. So that's your goal. What are some of the skills, knowledge you need? And so you can use the same process if you're even thinking of starting your own business, or if you have a business. I have used this process from a coaching perspective to say, how do you use it to make your business better? Okay. Once we become more effective, then whatever we want to be working on, we want to become more efficient. So this way, for the amount of time we have in between everything that we do, you do, we want to become more effective. So makes us more focused. We do more when there is a clear purpose. And I think this process, I have gotten feedback from people, and I've also obviously used it for myself. I think it makes us more focused and at least enhances the chances. There's no guarantee in life, and sometimes we could be at the right place at the time, and the luck obviously does play a role. But I also believe that sometimes it is our mental model, it is our readiness, it is a process that sometimes we see the door open that we would not have otherwise. So even though from an outside it may look like it was a lucky break that you were there when the door opened, the reality is subconsciously you were already in that domain, you were already in the thought process. So when the door was there, you knew that this is where you want to go. So I'll end it with my quotes that I truly love, and that is we all have goals which are really nothing but dreams and deadlines, and the commitment is the line we cross between and wishing. I live by these two things in my life, personally, professionally, as a father, as a husband, as a teacher. So with that, I am going to get off, and I think Shell will say a few words in the end. And if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them for you. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mo. That was wonderful. For our audience, Mo will be sticking around to answer questions in just a little while, but first I would like to talk briefly about the graduate school at Bay Path College. The college was established in 1897, and we have a long history of providing educational opportunities in the Pioneer Valley, now across the country, with some of our online graduate programs. Our main campus is located in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, where we offer traditional undergraduate programs for young women, in addition to our undergraduate and graduate coeducational programs for adult learners. We also have 2 satellite campuses conveniently located in Sturbridge and in Burlington, Massachusetts, and we are fully accredited by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which is the same accreditation that all of the state colleges and Ivy League schools in the New England region carry. And at Bay Path, we offer our graduate programs weekday evenings and online. We are currently accepting applications to many of our graduate programs. The first 5 listed here all have classes starting in March and some even in January. Now we will go ahead and answer questions, both Mo and I, so if you have any, please feel free to type them in. We will repeat your questions and answer them for you. Thank you so much for attending today. Okay, we do have a couple questions. The first I can go ahead and answer. When is the Nonprofit Management Bachelor of Arts program starting? We have a master's degree program in nonprofit management. I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to. That program does have classes starting in January and in March of next year.
Hi, so I have a question from one of you. It says, I have many goals that are predicated on events that may happen in the next 1 to 3 years. Is there a way to effectively limit your goal? Is it best to pick one and stick to it? I mean, there is no right or wrong answer. A lot depends on, ourselves. I'll just share with you what I have done, and then also, and similar questions that come up before. I typically have a piece of paper that I keep where I kind of break it up into 4 pieces. And, so there would be like I take a piece and draw a vertical line, a horizontal line, so now I have 4 boxes. And the reason I bring that up is that we will typically have goals in different parts of our life. And so in my case, one of the 4 would be is related to financial planning, in terms of obviously, what is the financial plan, short-term, long-term, so on. So that would be a goal for itself. The other one would have to be with career or business, so that would be a goal. The third one would have to do with, in my case, had to do with personal stuff like health and, weight targets or whatever you want to do. And the fourth one had to do with the family. So depending upon where we are and what stage of life, depending upon our, we have kids or don't have kids, etc. And I think so. You want to decide is to say what is your quadrant? What are your 4 things that are important to you? And then I would recommend that. Second thing I would tell people is to say that if you look at those 4 things, which one of those 4 is not as strong or relatively weaker that you want to enhance? So let's say, just using this conversation, because you're talking about career mapping, let's say you say that the place that I'm a little bit weak on, I got a good family life, etc. So the place I'm really weak on has been career planning. So I think what you want to do in that case is to say, okay, I think I am going to spend a little more emotional IQ and emotional energy and time figuring out what to do with that part. So I guess the answer would be, is there one goal? The answer is typically you do not want to dilute your effort over many, many things. You want to decide what are the 4 quadrants of your life that are important. Obviously the family, the financial, the work, personal, health, whatever. And then within that, I would recommend you have a goal. And from those 4 pieces, areas that you think needs to be leveraged the most, you want to spend a little bit more time there. And obviously what you don't want to do, which at times I was doing it, and which was just spending too much time in my job and affecting my family. So it's always a balancing act. And I think you want to be aware of it, but at the same time, if part of your a map is weak, you want to spend some time and energy doing that. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, so then the question is, hi Mo, can we receive a copy of this PowerPoint? How do we do that? Okay, Cheryl will take care of that. I will get the copy. Some are admissions related. So I'll let you. So I have a question from my colleague, Dr. Way, and the question has to do with, obviously this is a process, and then and how does this process help? Obviously things happen, life is not perfect. Things can happen, in our internal life with our families, could happen with the economy and so on. So my experience has been with this process is that I find that by having a process that one panics less, which means something happens, you don't panic as much because at least you know you had a roadmap. Can somebody lose a job even with the process? The answer is yes, they could if the company is basically not working out, or they move their jobs or whatever. So things can happen. But having a process, I think it does is to have people panic less, and this way it helps them to be able to be more resilient in what they want to do. And sometimes when they have a mentor, which, and when I have been a mentee for a lot of the people, when they come and ask me to say, okay, Mo, help me with career planning process, I would say, okay, show me your map. And if they would have created the map, and if they would have done it even a year ago, and when I sit down with them a year later, at least I can see, are they heading in the right direction or not? So by having, and I have also personally myself have my matrix, literal matrix like this, what I would have on the vertical column, my jobs. That I was the director of operations. I was a VP of purchasing. I was VP of international business. Those would be my situation. And then vertically, I would write down what function was it really in there: technology, strategic planning, finance. So if I would sit down with a potential person for a consulting job or anything like that, I can say, okay, here is my resume in a matrix. And I think this way it allows to have a conversation to say, okay, if the conversation is about, do you know how to do international business, or do you know how to do leadership, I would say, yeah. If you look at my matrix, of the last 10 jobs that I've had, 7 of them had leadership. So this way they can see a connection between the top 5 or 6 things that are important, at least in my career, and so you can use that also in a conversation with a business consulting or for the or for a job interview. So I hope that answers the question.
We do have a couple more admissions-related questions. First, do you have rolling admissions, or are all applications reviewed before acceptance decisions are made? No, we do accept applications on a rolling basis. If you are looking to start in either March or, for some programs, January of next year, we do encourage you to submit your online application. For attending this webinar today, there is no application fee. That's normally $45. My employer offers educational payments for advanced degrees. Would you accept their payment in full? We certainly do work with employers and their tuition reimbursement programs. If we could chat over the phone, that would be great. More than happy to talk to you more about that. Pretty easy process to do. We have one simple form that comes from our business office for you to, or for your employer to complete. That's about it. Just to address the questions regarding our online degree completion program, yes, there is a focus in nonprofit management and philanthropy. The phone number to contact regarding this program to get more information is 565-1273. That's 413-565-1273. Thank you. We do have another question. Do you accept Pell Grants? That would be a question to ask our continuing education admissions counselor. I think that is it for your questions. If we did not get to your question, please feel free to contact admissions on the screen, at the number on your screen, or Professor Mo Sattar. If you have any questions regarding the MBA program at all, since he is the program director, feel free to email him or again contact graduate admissions at the number or email address on your screen. Thank you again, and please stay tuned for the remaining webinars in this series. They will be posted very shortly. Thank you again.